Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Breaking the Silence, a podcast where we talk about addiction, recovery, and perseverance. I am very, very honored and grateful to have Sydney Graham, peer support manager from Families for Addiction Recovery, on the show today and on the podcast. Thank you so much, Sydney, for being here.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure.
Yeah, so Families for Addiction Recovery, when I first heard that and saw it appear on your page, I thought to myself, well, addiction is very synonymous with family. And, lots of times when, we have people on the show and we talk about addiction, some of the things that don't get talked about is, the family that struggle, the family that have to, navigate and work through the challenges when dealing with a loved one that's struggling with addiction, right? And, you've been able to, help cultivate a charity founded by parents for parents that struggle with addiction, giving them, the ability to have help, resources, and things of that nature. Tell me a little bit about the organization, how it started, and sort of where you've been able to see the growth and how you've been able to sort of navigate through this process where you've been able to really make a difference and impact in people's lives.
Yeah, well, I'm so happy to do that. One of the important things is we have to remember addiction starts, around 13 years old. So there are children that are struggling. There are so many people still living at home, obviously. So we call this a family illness because it does affect everybody. It was started by two incredible moms, simply because there was no help for the families. Families are absolutely lost. Families still believe in these very old adages and tough love, rock bottom. They don't understand it's an illness. And so nobody's out there helping the families figure out, how do we help our loved one that is living with us, deteriorating, and we have no say in anything. So this organization was really started in order to support other families right across Canada. And all of our peer supporters are trained in evidence-based solutions for the family. So how does the family do the best possible job with these great strategies to support a loved one, particularly at home? It doesn't necessarily have to be at home, but to move them towards recovery. Because the wait list out there can be up to 2 years. A lot of people don't want to get the help, and they need the help. This is a horrible, horrible illness, and it's wonderful people who are suffering with it. So families have a lot of power. And so we've set up this organization with 3 different support mechanisms. Everything is free here. So you can have a personal peer supporter and talk one-on-one with someone that has a similar journey. You can join our family support groups and be in a community of other moms and listen, or you can get support on demand because we have a live phone line that's open every single weekday for 3 hours and 2 hours on a Wednesday evening. And you've got support and skills training immediately. So we're out there to help the other families do a great job with a loved one and really participate in their care and help them get well.
Yeah, I mean, you say best, right, in your content. Families don't understand the science behind addiction. They don't understand sometimes that there is this it starts from at a very young age, and there could be a genetic predisposition, right? So you understand, and I guess the question I have for you is, do you help families see how big of a role that they play in the wellness of their loved one who's struggling? Because a lot of times what ends up happening, from my experience, is with family members is, well, this is our loved one's responsibility, and they have to find a way to figure it out themselves, and we'll be there to support, but we don't want any involvement. So what do you say to something like that?
I hear that all the time, and it drives me crazy because that's a blaming perspective. That's a moral failing what you're doing. It's bad what you're doing. So I'm going to leave that up to you to figure out. But if our child was suffering with cancer, would we be responding in the same way? So you mentioned genetics. That's really important because we know that addictions is incredibly hereditary, or it's got genetic links, and it just travels through family after family after family. That's not the person's fault if they have that genetic link.
Right.
But here's the other side of that as well that makes a big difference. About 90% of people that have an addiction start in their youth. Mm. Right. Well, up to 90% of youth also have a concurrent mental illness.
Wow.
So something is always, or trauma, or both. So something is usually always driving that addiction.
Right. Yeah.
So here's the other fact that's really important. We know things like ADHD, depression, anxiety, these mental illnesses are 50 to 60% hereditary. So you literally could have a child with the genetic addiction gene and the mental illness, and yet we're still blaming, but this is a brain disease. So as soon as we turn that perspective around, understand the science, we are now speaking to a patient. And I know some people don't like being referred to as a patient, but this isn't something you can do on your own, certainly not easily, because this is a really tough journey for anybody in this space. Nobody wants to be in this space. So the power that families have to make sure they're treating a loved one properly, just understanding what's really going on, where your power is with a lot of love and support and empathy for someone that is struggling. Because not only do parents have a stigmatizing perspective often because this messaging is not getting out there appropriately, and our medical community is not screaming it from the rooftops. So families still have these very old beliefs.
Right.
But so do people in the community and relatives and friends and providers that are there to treat you still don't understand these facts and still are shaming and blaming. So you wonder why people don't reach out for help, why they feel so bad about themselves, because we know shame prevents more than 50% of people from ever reaching out for help. So in fact, families do have a lot of power. But we got to start by educating people to make sure they understand what is going on, how it is that we can effectively help to start changing the whole narrative at home or from a distance with a loved one, to give them hope, let them know these are treatable illnesses. You are a wonderful person and you have a wonderful life just waiting for you. But let's see the doctors to get you the best possible help for the best possible outcomes.
Do you feel like, you talk a lot about the lack of education or maybe the lack of insight that families have? Do you feel like that lack of insight and possible education contributes to the shame that a loved one is facing when they're dealing with the addiction?
Yeah, there's a deep question. I mean, yeah, it absolutely could. And I certainly don't blame any families because families don't know any better. Yeah. We are taught these old beliefs and we still feel them, and it's hard to get good information. And I don't think there's a lot of intent to hurt anybody, but it's really from not being aware of what's going on. And so, yeah, we do have that ability to hurt somebody. But families also, as soon as we learn, have the ability to go back and say, hey, you know what? I have always loved you and I've always done my best, but I'm learning now. I think I've made some mistakes and I want to apologize. Can we start fresh? And can I be here to support you and partner with you through this so you're not doing it alone? Yeah. So a lot of people start with mistakes, but and for the person that's suffering, we need to learn, we make mistakes, we keep trying to do better, and we just continue on that path. We can always go back and apologize because we didn't know.
Absolutely. What do you think some of the most important messages you provide to families that you speak with or that you work with, just trying to understand and just come up to some form of answer or solution?
I don't know that there's 100% answer. This is like a lot of other illnesses, that there's a lot of different pathways. There's no guarantee for outcomes. Hope is one of the biggest things I like to promote because most people think that this is absolutely hopeless. This is the way they are. People who suffer believe they can't change. It's who they are. And that's not true, right? It is a piece of somebody. It's not who they are. And so understanding that piece, having the hope picturing a wonderful life. What are we working towards? Because if they don't have the hope, there's no reason for them to change. Why would they? So we can give them that hope. We can change that whole narrative for both the families and the person that is struggling. I think that's one of the most important things, I would think.
Mm-hmm. What are, when you see families come all the time, like, what do you feel like, what are some important strategies that you sort of, help families, or what families need to know in order to, get the help that they need? Like, what are some of the things that you guys use as a part of your support?
Yeah. So there's actually a wonderful book for families. It's called Beyond Addiction by Dr. Jeffrey Foote. And that's the people that have done all this research to come up with these strategies. So some of these strategies that we are promoting, it's really about love and support. Mm-hmm. If we can create a space for our loved one without fear of getting in trouble or being judged, and we are just there with the love and the support, that's a really good foundation. And then we think about our language, because language is incredibly powerful. And so being aware, we don't think in the same way that a loved one does who has these illnesses. They've got a sick brain. Mm-hmm. So the assumption is that they're going to understand what you're talking about and have the same beliefs and understanding, and they don't. Mm-hmm. They're coming from a sick brain and they're hurting. And so being very aware of your language to reach them. Doesn't really matter what we think is good. What is going to help them? What do they need to hear in order to get well? And then the other thing is creating structure, because change is very difficult for them. And making these decisions is very difficult. So we can help by actually setting some boundaries. The boundaries are always for the caregiver, because we are in this journey in parallel with a loved one. Mm-hmm. So what are the needs of the family, and what is it that you need to create the structure around in order to push them towards changing behaviors? Money is a really great example of that. If they have more money, there's more drugs. Addiction simply means loss of choice. If they get money, it's often going to go to the drugs. No fault to anybody. Yeah. So we can help create that structure by saying, you know what, I love you too much to give you that money. I don't want to be a part of hurting you, and I think I'm really hurting you, and I don't want to do that. So I can't give you money anymore. So everything that we do comes from a lot of love. But if they don't have the money anymore, the natural consequence is maybe less drugs. They're not going to get them as easily. And we're just we're not making it easy for them to continue, so that we can see more of that illness, so that they recognize they've got a problem, and then we can be right there to hopefully find the right resources to get them into a place of starting a journey towards wellness. So everything with love, compassion, support, respect, and partnerships, because they need someone at their side. This is a horrible thing to go through by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned money being a big trigger and a big sort of enabling piece for someone that's, struggling with addiction. Anything else that you find has been sort of a common theme or a common, trigger, or, sort of that gravitational pull to continue someone in the progression of their addiction?
Well, yeah, there's definitely a couple of things. I mean, we love our children. And so we want to have them at home. We want to look after them. Mothers are big fixers. We're going to take care of this problem. We're going to get rid of this problem for you. And yet that's not something that we can do. Mm-hmm. And so understanding what we can do. But a lot of our loved ones are living at home, but then they're not doing anything. So we're creating a space unintentionally where the behaviors can continue a little bit easily, because they're at home and they've got a roof over their head and food, and there's no changing happening. So if there's no change, there's going to be no change. So understanding we need to create some change for them. So that's a very common thing, that families just want to love and take care of them, which is fantastic. That's an important piece, but we also have to have change in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and seeing, services and things of that nature and how effective they can be for families. I mean, there's a lot of different sort of techniques and sort of therapies that work. Sometimes it's one-on-one counseling, sometimes it's group therapy, sometimes it's family therapy. What are some of the different services Families for Addiction Recovery offer to families?
So what we do is really train the family members.
Okay.
So that they're well educated, they sort of have an idea, taking care of themselves through this, because this is just absolutely horrendous for families who have someone that they love dearly and watching them harm themselves and creating so much pain. So self-care for families is probably one of the really big ones.
Right.
Because if families are not in a good place, and a lot of families are developing their own depression and anxiety, trying to deal with a loved one in this space. And if we're not in a good place, how do we help a loved one? So that's got to be one of the first principles, is really taking care of yourself. And then coming to us, we have a lot of resources on our website to help families, either books, podcasts, webinars, new research, new treatments that are coming down the line, so that we are aware of that. I have a lot of knowledge when I'm talking to the families that I deal with on, different programs that are out there that could be accessible. But it's, our goal really is, because it's so hard to get into treatment often, is, knowing the right things to do at home, because some families are literally doing 100% of care at home.
Right.
If we don't know what we're doing, how do we get the loved one in the right place and literally in this world save their lives?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to read a quote or something that you put down on paper, because I thought that it was very moving and effective. It says, "Addiction is not easy to talk about or deal with. Most people struggling with addiction never receive treatment, and families are left to provide a majority of the care, if possible. For those who do receive treatment, it is often only after they've hit rock bottom. It doesn't have to be this way." No.
Like most people that are going in to get care, it's often emergency care. So you have to be a victim in order to get, for those people that are on the further end of the scale. We're not talking sort of very mild addictions or, something simple. There are services for that. But I mean, it's true. It does not have to be like this. The services are, there's a lot of neglect. There's not appropriate services. There isn't a wide breadth from one end of the scale to the other. We have a lot of people that are dying on the streets and nothing is being done. We've got a lot of homeless, and the homeless are being blamed and they want them out. I get that, but that's kind of their last stance. They're trying to survive their life with meager belongings, and that's not to the fault of the people that are there. We need government and the medical community to change. We don't want to get to rock bottom. Rock bottom is just not a thing we should ever be talking about.
Yeah.
Right? The faster we can get the help to somebody, the better they're going to be. Do we wait for a cancer patient to get to stage 4 before we treat it?
No.
The system needs to be treating at stage 1, because the outcomes are going to be so much better. It's going to be less drain on the system. And you're also going to have less family members now added to the system because of the stress and worry that the families go through.
Yeah. So, if you're, we do have a lot of families that listen to our podcast, and what would you say, or what would you suggest to them in order to get ahead of, of this, so that the person that they are their loved one that they're, trying to help, it doesn't hit that place of rock bottom? What would be something that you could,
okay,
provide?
The first thing is easy. Call us and we're here to help you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Please do. Anywhere in Canada, we look after people. One of the things I think is really important often that we don't really think about, and knowing how to do this in the right way, would be find a good place to talk to a loved one. Of course, not when they're high or they're drunk, but sit down and authentically talk to them, because they're the ones that know what's going on and how much they suffer. And we could be asking questions to learn from them. We're not there to tell them what to do. We don't have that power. Mm-hmm. But we can learn a lot from them. How do you feel when you take those drugs? Do they do something for you? Do they help you? What are you dealing with? What kind of pain do you have that these substances might be helping you with? What could I do to support you through this because I don't want to see you getting worse. Can you educate me so I have an idea of what I can be doing for you? So it's just changing the narrative slightly from why do you do these drugs to why do you do these drugs? What do they do, right? So if we always think about coming from a place of love and knowing that we can learn a lot from them so our job becomes that much easier, there's a great strategy to start with. Show them the respect. Put them in a place of honor so that they are educating you, because a lot of them know exactly what's going on. But there's too much shame and they're not going to reveal that because they don't want to be judged.
Yeah.
And family is important to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you were to maybe say a message or a final thought or something that you could, say to the viewers and the listeners out there, that have somebody that's struggling, somebody that's gone through the struggle or trying to just find ways to persevere through this difficult time, what would be that message?
So many. I think one of the really important one would be see your loved one under all this. They're just buried in this illness, and they are not the illness. But if you're trying to reach them, if you're trying to figure out what's actually happening, if you're trying to find the right language, find your loved one that's in all of that. They are different than what the illness is, right? The illness often doesn't like us and gets really mad at us, but that doesn't mean that's what the loved one is thinking. So find those words that's going to reach your loved one, that's going to have an impact on them. Don't worry about what that illness is saying. We need to kind of dig a little bit deeper, remember what they were like before that, speak to that person, because we can reach them in there. But you got to remember, it's like they're in this coat of armor is protecting them. That's the illness. But there's a sad, hurt, vulnerable young person that's in there wanting to help. If we can speak to that person and remember that person with a lot of love, speak to that to see if you can't reach them that way. Because that's kind of what's going on for so many people is, speak with love and speak to that loved one because they can come out of this and we can make a big difference for them.
Very well said. We're here with Sydney Graham, Families for Addiction Recovery. If you're looking for help, please visit their website, www.forcanada.org. They'll be able to help navigate you in the right direction and instill some hope and education for you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's a real pleasure chatting with you. Thank you.
Thanks again. And don't forget, next week, we have an amazing show with one of our doctors on board. So don't miss out. Listening to Breaking the Silence. I am your host, Allen Kharlip. We'll see you guys next time.